Good afternoon. We're convening the Joint Committees on Transportation and Culture and the Arts and Agriculture and the Environment on our 3 p.m. agenda here in State Capitol Conference Room 224. We have several bills on the agenda. We just ask everyone to make sure you have your testimony submitted to the committee. If you're testifying in person, we'll ask you to summarize and keep it short to about a minute to make sure we have time to get through everybody. That set up first is House Bill 1899 relating to state snails, which designates certain snail species as official state snails. And testifying first is the Department of Land and Natural Resources. Good afternoon.
Aloha chairs, vice chairs, members of the committee, Chelsea Arnott on behalf of the Department of Land and Natural Resources. And I'm so happy to be here to provide testimony in support of Native species this time. The department stands on its written testimony and support, and we have our partners at Bishop Museum here to answer any questions you folks may have. Mahalo.
Thank you. Up next is the Coordinating Group on Alien Pest Species.
Aloha chairs, vice chairs, members of the committee. My name is Kylie Lefebvre, and I'm the planner for the Coordinating Group on Alien Pest Species. We are in support of this bill. I'd like to give a big mahalo for your continued support for bills like this that not only raise awareness about our native species, but really just bring joy and happiness to our community. We need that in times of our state of our native species being endangered and being the world capital for extinction. So, I feel like in the past year, being the year of the kahuli, we are seeing kahuli everywhere on shirts and merchandise and on murals on the side of Bishop Museum, which is really great. So these kinds of campaigns are working in order to raise awareness about our species and to really give rise to efforts that are going towards conserving them and saving them from extinction. Also, it's making a difference in our student communities as well. We have Manoa Elementary here on the line, and I know other students that would have loved to be there with you today to share how important our kuhuli are. So thank you for giving them a platform as well. And thank you for continuing to support our native species. Please consider passing this bill. Mahalo.
Thank you very much. Testifying next is the Manoa Elementary School 5th grade. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, chairs, vice chairs, and members of the committee. We are representing our class from Manoa Elementary, who stands in strong support of this bill. We feel it is important to recognize kahuli species as their official snake snail symbols. As you already know, kahuli are important symbols in the native Hawaiian culture, and they play a vital role in the health of Hawaii's forests and watersheds. Recently, we had the opportunity to see how unique the endangered kahuli are when Dr. Young and Miss Kealoha from Bishop Museum visited our class. Thanks to the hard work of scientists and researchers, there's a lot already being done to preserve these species. But they cannot do it alone, and many other children may never have the opportunity to see the amazing diversity of the kahuli if we don't act now and bring more awareness to the problem. Your support is needed, and let's be part of the solution today. Aloha and mahalo for your time.
Thank you. That's everyone we had signed up to testify. Is there anyone else wishing to testify in this measure? Please come forward. Good afternoon.
My name is Doreen Yuran. I'm the Bishop Museum Malacology curator. And first I wanted to say thank you to Senator Gabbard. Back in 2019, you proposed a bill, and we had a couple of requests to be actually putting a snail for each of the islands, as well as getting more communities support. And so for the Year of the Kahuli, we did have voting ballots for the entire community through DOE. So we took it to heart, all the suggestions you guys asked us to do. And so we brought a couple of the snails. So Ka'ala saputia, it was a snail candidate that was selected for Oahu. And then we have Lamonella venusta. So this snail species was actually rediscovered in 2008, and the last time it was seen was 1960. This was rediscovered in 2018 by Keahi Besamunte on Molokai, and that time it was the last time it was seen. It was in 1940. We also have 2 more snails that we just found in the Kohala Mountains. It took us 15 years to find this snail, Auriculella armata. We thought it was also extinct, and so we really hope that you guys are also supportive of this bill because our snails still need a lot of help and a lot of love and a lot of recognition. And so we really appreciate you guys hearing us today. And if we do have time, because I know we only have 3 on the agenda, we do have these snails for you guys to look at more in-depthly. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else wishing to testify in this measure? Nobody wants to compete against the Manoa Elementary School folks? Okay. Well, with that, thank you, everybody.
I have a
Oh,
question.
Vice Chair.
Okay, I'm not sure who can respond to my question, either DLNR or Bishop Museum. I come from the Big Island. The red lung snails were the victims of the red lung disease. So I'm just kind of curious. And thanks to all the students who came out in support. And I think this is something that we're trying to at least save if we consider them to be our existing Hawaiian snail. But how do we know the difference between the native snail that we want to preserve and a snail that did affect and created this red lung disease? So I'm just curious because I think for Big Island, it was devastating because some people died
Yes.
because of the effects of that invasive snail. And so I'd like to offer that as something that we should consider as perhaps, is this the right thing to do? Because I grew up in a sugar plantation atmosphere. And so we had snails on our streets, going up the stairs. And as kids, we all stomped and killed it. So I am just wondering, hopefully it doesn't happen to our Hawaiian snails if we're so designating it. But anyway, help us understand.
So back in 2018, the bill that Senator Gabbard proposed was actually drafted by a high schooler from KS. And he wanted to figure out how to do exactly that, how to be able to educate the community, the importance of our native species, whether it's a snail, a bird, our moths, our flies, with the invasive snails, right? And so one of the things that he thought of is getting people to understand. So by having a state snail, by having state flower, by having state birds, it creates that acknowledgement, that recognition, right? In many proverbs in the Hawaiians, it's like when we give it a name, we give it life. But when we do no longer give it a name, we forget about it. So a lot of these biological extinction is also a cultural extinction. And by being able to provide acknowledgement with the state snail, it says, you are important, we hear you, you are the jewels of the forest, you still are, right? And that hopefully it'll also provide more support and more funds throughout the DOE, through the Bishop Museum, through the DLNR, to provide and create these important educational materials to be like, these are the invasive snails. We need to make sure that they do not spread. We need to make sure that they do not continue to come to these islands. And these are our native snails that no matter where you go, there will be no place on earth to receive these snails on these islands. Once they're gone, they're gone. We had 759 snails described from Hawaii. 756 are only found on these islands. And once they're gone, they're gone. So it's really important that, one, we acknowledge them, know their importance. By DLNR and Bishop Museum, we were able to do all of these fairs and said, they're important for our watershed. There is a great watershed manager at PKW that said, if you don't protect the snails, the whales won't come.
Do you know what's the difference between the snail that was identified that created the red lung disease from what we saw today?
Yes.
And what's out there?
Yes. So the thing is, what has been incriminated for the spread of the rat lungworm disease is Parmarian martensi, and that came from Asia. Okay, and so a lot of our snails, yes, they have relationships with snails globally, but the thing is that there are certain snails from certain areas that are better hosts for the rat lungworm disease. And unfortunately, all snails are potential hosts, but some are better hosts than others. And we don't want the spread of these diseases to our snails either, right? And so, yes, we want to continue to be eradicating and doing mitigation for our invasive snails while protecting our native species also.
Is there a reason why non-Department of Ag or those that conducted the research on the red lung disease, there was no testimony that I see? I'm just curious, because if it hit me as snails and what it did, devastating the Puna area and our gardens, I was kind of surprised that the testimonies haven't gone further. That I'm just saying it because I'm looking at an issue that is still near and dear to us because it's still out there. Okay.
Yeah, and Vice Chair Inouye, if I could address Chelsea Arnott on behalf of the Department of Land and Natural Resources. The native snails that we're looking at designating, they are located in a very specific habitat. They aren't the snails that we see, the non-native snails that are in your gardens and on your lettuce, and really the ones that are creating rat lungworm coming into your home and into your mouth. So that's part of the education piece of having this designation, is just also talking about the snails, but also talking about that surrounding habitat and that really important ecosystem that they really need to survive and thrive. And so there's just a separate habitat between those.
I understand.
well,
I don't want to
actually-
belabor this discussion, but it's just something out there that I thought I need to understand as well. It's kind of serious to me.
Oh, yeah, no, it's
but,
absolutely
it's
serious.
something that you all did the fine work of finding those little guys that you showed us. I mean, I couldn't even tell that was a snail on one of the rocks or the medium that you had put it in. But okay, Chair, I just wanted to have a discussion on it.
But one thing very quickly, actually some of our snails are right next to some of the places that we do live, particularly on the Big Island. So Hilo Forest Reserve and a lot of these areas are still prime habitat for native species, which we still need to protect.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Further questions?
Yeah, come back.
Sorry.
That's all right. So of the 200 and whatever you said, 50 some.
759 snails.
759, okay.
That's a lot.
So how do you pick the snail? How did you arrive on which snail to pick?
Okay, so for one thing, we decided to pick snails that were endemic to that particular island. We also picked snails that are still living, if possible, like for Kaho'olawe, we haven't found any live snails yet. Oh, thank you. And we also picked 2 snails per of each of the islands. And what we also tried to do was do a diversity of snails across the island. So it's not just one family or one genus or one habitat, but we wanted to show the breadth of life of our Hawaiian land snails. So this was, sorry, the losing candidate for Oahu. I voted for this one, but it lost. Unfortunately, Ka'ala sobertila, that is endemic to the highest point of Oahu, won. So yes, so we did, and we also did talk to the UNR as well as other snail experts on the candidate species for each of the different islands.
Okay. That makes sense. Thank you.
So then further question then, which one are we talking about that's related to this bill?
So there are 8. So Big
So
Island.
how many? Well, several.
Yes, so
Okay.
several. So because that was what was asked of us from the last bill, because we picked, actually,
So what's
he
Big
picked
Island?
this one, but the Big Island and Kauai didn't want an Oahu-centric snail to represent them. So we made sure that each of the different islands had their endemic snail
Okay.
chosen.
Okay.
Senator Kanuha?
Thank you. I don't want to take this over the top, but I did remember this bill several years ago, and it was designated, one snail at the time. And I asked that question, and I hated to, because that was one of the questions I asked, why pick one snail? And
that was a great question.
And I really appreciate,
Yeah,
the
me too.
diversity and why we're doing this now, and, having all the different snails involved and the education pieces and everything. So I didn't mean to kill that thing the last time, but
No,
I'm glad we're
this-
going.
I'm actually glad that you
sure.
did, because the opportunities that allowed us to provide more material to reach out to the public, to actually have some time to rediscover some snails that we were able to put as a candidate. That was exciting. And so thank you. And that was much appreciated
it's
for your
awesome.
suggestion.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, everybody. Any other discussion? If not, thank you, everyone, and appreciate the years of discussion on this. Things tend to move along at a snail's pace here. So. All right, on to the next measure, House Bill 2650, relating to invasive species, which appropriates funds to DOT for the coordinated removal of albizia and other invasive trees. Testifying first is the Department of Transportation.
Hi, good afternoon, chairs and vice chairs. Robin Shishido with the State Department of Transportation, and we stand by our written testimonies that's been submitted in support of this measure. Thank you.
Thank you. Up next is the Department of Land and Natural Resources.
My comfortable space. Aloha, chairs, vice chairs, members of the committee, Chelsea Arnott on behalf of the Department of Land and Natural Resources and program support for our Hawaiian Invasive Species Council. The department stands on its written testimony and support. Albizia is a huge problem across the state, especially on our roadways and impeding infrastructure. So we support this bill and really appreciate the committee hearing it. Mahalo.
Thank you. Up next is the Public Utilities Commission. Good afternoon.
Chairs, vice chairs, member of the committees, Leo Asuncion, chair of the PUC. We'll stand on our written testimony providing comments, but I would like to note that, we think that this type of cross collaboration, if you will, between the utilities and the Department of Transportation to get rid of not only albizias, but other invasive species, kind of kills two birds with one stone, right? Because the utilities currently with all the wildfire things they need to do, vegetation management and the like. So while they can provide that, kind of like their share of that, I think we can take care of all of these types of, fuel, if you will, for wildfires, right? So kind of doing two things with the cross collaboration.
Thank you. Up next is Hawaiian Electric.
Aloha, chairs, vice chairs, members of the committee. Jennifer Zelko testifying on behalf of Hawaiian Electric in strong support of HB 2650 HD2. We do stand on our written testimony, but happy to answer any of your questions. Thank you.
Thank you. That's everyone we had signed up to testify. Is there anyone else wishing to testify in this measure? If not, other questions?
Questions on DLNR. Interesting that, well, Big Island and DKI Highway, Saddle Road, so-called Highway 200 in Hilo, and the highway that gets over to Kona. Interesting because I've seen, matter of fact, I think years ago when we first started to provide the resources to get rid of albizias, but I noticed that was kind of interesting how we got rid of them, or how we will be doing further, I guess, eradication. But there was one thing that kind of surprised me, is there was an injection of something that goes into the bark of the trees that kill the trees. And there were some areas that I found throughout the state that actually whoever was hired to get rid of the albizias cut the trees down. So do you know what was more effective? Because I noticed that the ones that were injected, and you can tell because the dead trees were still up, and then gradually they were killed. I guess it dies.
Yeah, mahalo for the question, Vice Chair. Chelsea Arnott on behalf of the Department of Land and Natural Resources. So it depends. It depends on the situation. And the technique that you're talking about, the injection, that's called incision point application. And it was developed by a researcher out of the University of Hawaii that basically takes a hatchet and you make like shaka length cuts along the circumference of the tree getting into the bark, and then you apply a concentrated amount of herbicide into that. So where you see the standing trees, that and all the foliage and everything is gone, those trees are dead, and that's using that IPA technique. And that technique is very efficient. You can do a lot of trees in a short amount of time. And the Big Island Invasive Species Committee has developed the Albizia Assassins, which is a community-based team that can use this very easy to use technique a lot across large swaths, of course, within the rate of the label that's there. But you don't want to use that technique necessarily right next to roadways or high value infrastructure, because the trees are standing, they're dead, and they can fall. They usually fall in place and not as big of chunks as just a regular live tree, but it still is a hazard.
So it depends on what process you
Yep.
use. It depends on, I guess,
What's around
what's
of
around.
value. So they'll
Okay.
do the full cut.
I was just curious
Yeah.
because if it's cheaper and we're hiring, if we're doing it on state property and state funding, then is the more reasonable amounts to, I guess, when you do an RFP, what the cost difference is. But I was just curious. I didn't, and I can think about that now. A reason why probably it won't apply to probably near the highway or
Yeah, if there's no power lines, and that's the utility and Department of Transportation's Kuleana, and they can kind of figure out. But the nice thing is there's multiple tools for multiple situations that we can apply to
And
control
I know
Albizia.
it's very costly when we
very costly.
contracted out to somebody to cut the trees down. Thanks so
Definitely.
much.
Yeah, mahalo.
We learned something new.
Chelsea, a few years ago, actually many years ago, I had the opportunity to go up in a helicopter and see herbicide ballistic technology, or HBT, applied to Myconia.
Yes.
Is that an option in terms of dealing with Albizia or no?
This is a great question, because we're already in the works of trying to get a special local needs label with the Department of Agriculture for another type of herbicide. So there's different herbicides for different invasive plants. Dr. Leary took you up to do Myconia with HBT using Garlon. We're looking at one that could use an herbicide that's effective on Himalayan ginger, invasive tree ferns, and pampas grass. And now we're starting discussions about another herbicide that's effective for Albizia and using that, doing HBT for that. So those discussions are happening because that's such a great tool, and also great for protecting our high value native forests up in the higher reaches that are really hard to access.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mahalo.
Any further questions? If not, all right, thank you, everybody. Let me turn it over now to the AEN committee.
Okay, next up is HB 2758, facilitates the control and eradication of invasive species and pests, establishes a plant nursery licensing program, requires the Board of Ag to designate certain species as pests for control or eradication, imposes certain limits on imports and transportation, updates the method by which the department's noxious weed list is updated. First up is the AG.
Good afternoon, Chair Gabbard, Chair Lee, and members of the committees. Deputy Attorney General Jennifer Waihe'i Polk, on behalf of the Department of the Attorney General, we have provided our written comments on this bill, identifying our concern with those provisions of the bill that authorize the Hawaii Ant Lab and the Invasive Species Committees to perform certain regulatory functions that cannot be given to non-governmental entities that have no separate legal existence. To resolve this concern, we recommend removing them from exercising these powers, and we have provided recommended revisions in our written testimony. Thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you, Jen. Department of Ag.
So on the left, let's try this side.
Okay.
Thank you, chairs, vice chairs, members. The department respectfully stands in opposition, and while we support the intent of controlling invasives, the main argument in our opposition, I'm sorry, Dexter Kishida, Hawaii Department of Agriculture. The main reason for opposition is just the cost of implementing or standing up a program like this. Roughly between CIP and operating costs, it's about 100 million that we're going to need to create a branch and add the people necessary to implement a licensing program. Thank you.
Thank you, Dexter. Chelsea Arnott from DLNR.
Aloha chairs, vice chairs, members of the committee, Chelsea Arnott on behalf of the Department of Land and Natural Resources and Program Support for our Hawaii Invasive Species Council. Our department supports this measure. Everything that's included in this bill I've outlined in our testimony aligns with so many of the actions in our 2017-2027 Hawaii Interagency Biosecurity Plan. This is really building the bones for Department of Agriculture to be able to do prevention and management of a lot of the invasive species and pests that we either have here already or that are on the horizon. And we just really appreciate the drafters of this bill because it's a lot. There's a lot to take in. There's a lot to digest. And also the committees for hearing this bill. We think it's a really important measure and just want to put our support for that. Mahalo for the opportunity.
Thank you, Chelsea. Brian Miyamoto from Hawaii Farm Bureau.
Good afternoon, chairs, vice chairs, members of the committees. Brian Miyamoto here on behalf of the Hawaii Farm Bureau. You have a written testimony. We're providing comments. We do share some of the same concerns as both the Attorney General and the Department of Agriculture. Primarily, and it is in our testimony, we don't want to see Department of Agriculture lose their authority. You've heard us before talk about invasive species in the Department of Agriculture. They're the tip of the spear. We need to do a better job. I'll say that. We absolutely need to do a better job, and that's very apparent with the amount of invasive species bills that we are hearing this year. Yesterday in your committee, Chair, 7 out of 12. Today, 2 out of 3. Tomorrow in House Ag, I believe it's 6 out of 12. Invasive species is a problem. So you heard the Department of Agriculture, you've heard us come before. We need the resources. Again, I'll repeat, the $50 million was the number in 2002. The projected numbers this year is $90 million that the state needs to invest to control invasive species. We do need to support HIS. We do need to support the Hawaii Ant Lab. We do need to support CGAPs and the IS. But the Department of Agriculture should be the tip of the spear, should be responsible for this, and they need appropriate funding and resources. Again, if we don't stop this, we'll continually be dealing with new invasive species while we're trying to control the ones that we have now. And that's why we have been supporting Farm Bill's bill, your bill, Senator, SB 2114, which funds the biosecurity program, which not only helps with pre-entry, helps to control while they're here, but also talks about import replacement so we can reduce what we're importing in here. So we have less hitchhikers coming into the state of Hawaii. Again, we are offering our comments. We appreciate the introducers of this bill and all the other invasive species bill. It is a top priority. How are our farmers and ranchers supposed to produce without anything to produce because of these pests? Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Brian. Wayne Tanaka from the Sierra Club on Zoom.
Not present on Zoom, Chair.
In support, Stephanie Easley, CGAPs.
Not present on Zoom either, Chair.
She's here and present, please.
Good afternoon, chairs, vice chairs, members of the committee. My name is Stephanie Easley with the Coordinating Group on Alien Pest Species. We stand in strong support of this measure. It is a package of updates to the invasive species statutes that HDOA carries out, some of which are no cost, that just put Hawaii on a level playing field with other states to protect public health, agriculture, especially citrus, forests, and the people of Hawaii. We are working to try to find a compromise that HDOA might be willing to agree to with respect to nursery regulation that would be affordable and able to move this forward. We are continuing to work. There's an effort being led by legislators to come up with some compromises, and we hope that you will continue to move this bill forward so that that process can play out. And the last thing that it does that I'll point out is it helps HDOA update its regulations. We just heard a bill to fund albizia removal. There is no prohibition on importing, buying, selling, and planting albizia in the state because the noxious weed list is from 1992. These regulations are out of date. This bill provides a process to update the noxious weed list on a rolling basis so that trees and species that are causing this expensive damage will be prohibited from being commercially bought and sold. I'm here if you have any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Stephanie. Sanford Chun from HGEA, opposed. Eric Tenoy from HFNA, opposed. Guy Sellier from Hawaii Forestry Industry Association, comments. Pamela Tumpap from Maui Chamber of Commerce with comments. Olan Fisher from Kuaina Ulu, Aumo is in support. And all the rest of these are in support. Hunter Hevelin from Hawaii Farmers Union, Madeline McKeague from the Council for Native Hawaiian Advancement, Nancy Redfeather from Ka'uhana Unapua, Barbara Ka'au Moana from Hui Ho'omalu Ika'aina, in support also. Olu Campbell from Hawaii Land Trust, Kathleen Pahinui from North Shore Neighborhood Board, and the following individuals, again, all in support. Jennifer Valentine, Benton Pang, Jacqueline Ambrose, Greg Pupioni, Patricia Blair, Alessandra, Kim Jorgensen, Denise Boisbert, Sherry Pollock, B.A. McClintock, Renee Lowe, Carolyn Kunitake, Natasha Lata, Cheyenne Kalama, Sharde Freitas, Thomas Brandt, Pete Doftor, Diane Ware, Dale Evans, Mariko Whitenack, Clemens Mayer, Barbara Berry, Corey Harden, Carol Kwan, Brianne Fong, Peter Wilson, Bo Breda, Natalie Para, and Beverly Heiser. Anyone else wishing to testify on this measure? Members, any questions? Senator Richards.
Yeah, Dexter and Chelsea. Comments have been made up to this point about the invasive species, and I think Brian, you could probably be up here as well, and I may call you up, but I think we all agree we have an invasive species, I won't say problem, crisis is a better way to describe it. And I understand why you're saying what your deputy about this, and it comes down to funding, and I think we need and I don't like to piecemeal different legislation, because I think we're going to miss the big picture. From the funding standpoint, I know, Chelsea, you talked about support the bill, or are you supporting the intent of the bill? And maybe I should start with that question.
We support the measure. And like I mentioned, we put together this Hawaii Interagency Biosecurity Plan back in 2017 and had a full-on planning process that identified the gaps in actions. And this bill is addressing many of those actions addressed in the biosecurity plan. And this is something that the Hawaii Invasive Species Council leadership signed on to in terms of the implementation and moving the actions forward in that plan across the 10-year timeline that it addresses.
Okay, so, and I get that. My concern is the funding to actually get this thing done. And there's aspects of it that I really like, and some of it I'm a little bit questioning on. From a funding standpoint, Dexter, assuming this goes through, what could you get done based upon your current funding?
Actually, most of the bill, like not word count wise, but most of the items contained in the bill aren't going to cost us a whole lot more. Updating rules regularly, that's a normal process. Mm-hmm. Some of the other protection measures, like the firewood, it actually simplifies it. I don't need to run a rule now. It really is the licensing program that is going to be the major cost in this. And so that is where it's a whole new program that we'd have to develop to ensure we can keep agriculture producers producing mm-hmm. while still controlling and implementing the program.
Okay. And do you see value in a licensing program?
I do. And we're looking at maybe a baby step. Like, is there something else that we can agree to that won't cost $100 million this year, be it a registration or something like that, and a registration self-assessment this year or something to that effect, because maybe that will look closer to what the produce industry has, or even meat producing industry in traceability and things like that. So that might be the baby step. That won't cost $100 million. It will take some staff time, but not a whole new branch.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah. Thank you, Deputy Director Kishida. Couldn't the department do this now in rulemaking?
Many of the items we could.
And
We could.
what's the reason for DOA not doing it in rulemaking?
Capacity. Rulemaking just takes a long time. And we don't have a designated staff or team really to keep the rulemaking going. Because it's really constant revisions. 1970 something, the last time revisions were made.
And-
I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, but as a follow-up to that, my last question is DOA committed to doing rulemaking on this issue? Because obviously there's an issue with invasive species, as we hear. What is DOA willing to go down that route rather than a proposed measure?
Absolutely. Our throttle point really is just capacity and has been capacity. Chapter 72 was a little outside of those revisions, and we're really pushing to get that done sooner than later, which will be a great measure to solve some of the issues. But things like firewood importation, et cetera, it is going to take a little bit of time for my team to draft up those rules, submit it, and shepherd it through the process.
Thank you, Deputy
Thank you.
Director. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, a question for you as well. The biosecurity bill that the Farm Bureau spoke about, which I also am a big supporter of that measure. We are from the farm industry. We're farmers. I am a farmer as well. With that said, how did DOA, what was your testimony with regards to the biosecurity bill that's been around?
That biosecurity bill we've been in support of. What that biosecurity bill does is really that very, very initial step. We haven't done a good quality risk assessment on where these primary pathways are in quite a while. So that data is a little old. We need to redo that, and that bill enables, or part of that bill enables us to functionally do that.
Did you get a chance to look at the AG's opinion on this measure?
Yes.
Because I think it put the onus on DOA.
It does, but rightly so, since we are a department and our staff, and even
That's
in
your
our,
kuleana.
it is.
Well, another thing is the cost of this bill and versus the biosecurity ones that has been the farmers and DOA is in support of that one. So, yeah, okay.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Okay. I'm good. I'll turn it back to you.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. So for the measures on the 3 p.m. agenda, let's go into decision-making. Chairs having conferred. Up first is House Bill 1899 relating to state snails. Thank you to everybody for participating, in particular the students who took time out of their busy school day to testify. Recommendation is to move this forward as is. Any discussion? If not, sorry about that. No worries. 1899 recommendation pass as is. Vice and Chair votes aye.
Chair's recommendation to HB 1899 as is to pass unamended. Okay, for the Committee on TCA, Chair's recommendation then is to pass unamended. Any discussion? Okay, hearing none, Chair for the vote.
Aye.
Okay, Vice Chair goes with reservations at this point. Senator Elefante.
Aye.
Okay, Senator Kanuha.
Aye.
Okay, Senator Awa.
Aye.
Measure is adopted, Mr. Chair.
Same recommendation for AEN. Any discussion? Chair votes aye.
Thank you, Chair. On Measure 1899, pass unamended. Chair votes aye. Vice Chair votes aye. Senator Decoit. Senator Rhodes is excused. And Senator Awa. Aye. Chair, you have 4 in favor. Motion is adopted.
Thank you, members.
Thank you. Moving on to House Bill 2650 relating to invasive species, which appropriates funds to DOT for invasive species removal and requires matching funds from public utilities. Recommendations to move as is. Any discussion? If not, Vice Chair.
Okay, for the Committee on TCA, Chair's recommendation to pass HB 2650, House Draft 2 with unamended. Okay, with 5 members present, any voting with reservations, any no votes. Measure is adopted, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Same recommendation for AEN. Any discussion? Chair votes aye.
On the measure 2650, passing unamended, chair votes aye, vice chair votes aye, Senator DeCoit. Senator Rhodes is excused, and Senator Owa, aye. Chair, you have 4 in favor, motion is adopted.
Okay, thank you, members. And then on HB 2758, we are going to defer decision-making on this one until Monday, March 18th at 1:45 p.m. in this room, 224. We have additional information that will be coming in the end of the week, so we need some extra time. And that does it.
Thank you. And for the TCA Committee on HB 2758 HD2, we'll be deferring decision-making until the end of our 3 p.m. agenda, Tuesday, 19 here in this room. Okay, that closes out our joint agenda. Thank you to the AEN committee for joining us. Good afternoon. We're convening the Committee on Transportation and Culture and the Arts on our 3:05 p.m. agenda here in State Capitol Conference Room 224. We have a number of bills on the agenda, so we'll just be asking everyone to limit your testimony if you've already submitted it in writing. That will help us make sure we get to everybody on the agenda. First, is House Bill 2065 HD2 relating to excessive noise, which amends the appropriation for the noise traffic pilot program at DOT. Testifying first is, we have 2 individuals in support, but no one signed up to testify. Is there anyone here wishing to testify in this measure this afternoon? If not, all right. Seeing as there's no one to ask questions of, we'll move on to our next measure, House Bill 2071, relating to the photo red light imaging detector system, which provides that any photo red light imaging detector system's clear and unobstructed recorded image of a motor vehicle license shall be prima facie evidence that the motor vehicle to which the license plate is attached is the motor vehicle for which the license plate was issued, and requires the state or county or other third parties to implement a process to record the date and basically do a bunch of other technical stuff. So that set up first is DOT.
Hi, good afternoon, Chair and Vice Chair, members of the committee. Robin Shishido with Hawaii Department of Transportation, and we stand by our written testimony as submitted in support. Thank you. And here for any questions.
Thank you. Up next, we have the Retail Merchants of Hawaii.
Not present on Zoom.
Thank you. That's everyone who had signed up to testify. Is there anyone else wishing to testify in this measure? If not, are there any questions?
Question for Robin. Robin?
Yes.
Oh, thanks for continuing to stay on. I'm kind of just curious with regards to this measure, identifying that the owner seems like the onus will be on the owner of the vehicle, no matter who is driving it, right?
Correct.
Yes. Okay. So those that are having arrangements allowing use of the car, the vehicles, like, those STVs and vacation rentals, and without going through rental cars. So the question is, with Turo, then we'll probably know who are the Turo car owners, which has been pretty much not in the interest of, or not having the knowledge of DOT, like the issues that we're having at our airports for those that are illegally parking in the garages. So it's going to be interesting what your, I guess, the summons and the citation, I guess the owner of the car will have to provide, I guess, the necessary paperwork or continue to debate the citation or whatever. Is that what happens? They can plea later and say, that's my car, but somebody else is driving.
Yes, they can, but I believe the way the bill is written and for the pilot project, I mean, it is on the owner of the car, regardless of who is driving. And I have Lee Nagano on if, Lee, is that correct? Did I misstate anything?
No, you're correct. And, for rental car companies, they do have standard language in their contract that if you do have a violation while using the rental car, that the rental car can assess you.
Right, but not with the Turos and those private sector persons that just allow others to drive their vehicle, yeah?
If they have it in their contract with whoever's renting the vehicle, they can.
Okay, all right, thank you, Chair.
Any further questions? If not, thank you, everyone. Let's move on to the next measure, House Bill 1578, relating to transportation, which permits a shipping container chassis that holds a valid out-of-state certificate, vehicle registration to obtain a certificate of safety inspection, and makes other conforming amendments. And testifying first is the Department of Transportation.
Hi, good afternoon again, and we stand by written testimony in support. Thank you.
Thank you. Up next, we have the Retail Merchants of Hawaii in support. That's everyone who signed up to testify. Is there anyone else wishing to testify on this measure? If not, right, are there any? Sorry?
Mattson.
We do have Mattson's testimony in support. With comments? In support. Thank you. Okay, if there are no questions on this one, let's move on to the next measure, which is House Bill 1861 relating to number plates, which requires license plates issued after 1/1/2025 to include an Okina and the word Hawaii, and makes other amendments. And testifying first on 1861 is the City and County of Honolulu. Oh, excuse me. No one had signed up to testify, but we have testimony and support from City and County of Honolulu and a number of individuals. Is there anyone here wishing to testify in this measure? If not, are there any questions? If not, thank you. Let's move on to the next measure, House Bill 1869, relating to unmanned aircraft, which establishes the felony offense of misuse of unmanned aircraft in the first, second, and third degrees. Testifying first is the Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Pamela Sturrs, on behalf of the Department of Corrections. I'm the Deputy Director of Correctional Institutions on behalf of Director Tommy Johnson. We stand in support of this measure. And I'm not sure if you need anything else.
Oh, no, thank you.
I'm available for questions.
Appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Up next is the Department of the Prosecuting Attorney, City and County of Honolulu. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Aloha Chair, Vice Chair, and members of the committee. Wilson Unga, a Deputy Prosecuting Attorney for the State of Hawaii, and on behalf of the Department of the Prosecuting Attorney, we stand on our written testimony previously submitted. I believe I testified to this before this committee on the Senate bill. The House bill is, I think, identical in nature, and I'll be available for questions.
Thank you. Testifying next is Hawaiian Electric. Good afternoon.
Afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. My name is Cullen Chong. I'm the UAS Program Manager for Hawaiian Electric. Hawaiian Electric doesn't oppose HB 1869 HD1 in its entirety, but rather suggests a few changes. We first proposed that adding public utility to the list of persons and entities exempt to subsection 711B3, C3, and D3. Hawaiian Electric would like to mitigate the risk of its employees and contractors being prosecuted as felons for performing normal UAS operations in ordinary course of business. Second, we oppose the current composition of subsection 711D1D, as we believe it is overly broad and its application might lead to unintended consequences. The existing draft bill states as follows: misuse of an unmanned aircraft in the third degree. 1, a person commits the offense of misuse of an unmanned aircraft in the third degree if the person intentionally, knowingly, or recklessly operates the unmanned aircraft and thereby damages property of another without the other's consent in the amount exceeding $750. The key issue here is that the words intentionally and knowingly are left to prosecutorial discretion. In theory, any commercial UAV operator whose UAV becomes inoperable in flight for reasons other than operator's negligence or reckless activity might result in damaged property. For example, a drone pilot could have his or her drone struck by another drone or a bird, or face rapid battery loss, face loss of control due to interference. In these instances, the drone's pilot's initial command and control of the drone was both intentional and knowing, but the events that followed, which led to property damage, were certainly not intended and certainly not reckless. One way to address this problem is to increase the damage dollar amount to something more befitting of a third-degree felony. For example, many accidents with bicycles, mopeds, scooters, opening car doors in parking lots result in more than $750 damage. Are these accidents worth being charged as a third-degree felony? We believe a higher dollar value would be more appropriate. Another way to improve the draft legislation is to amend subsection 711D, paragraph D, to say damages the property of another by an unmanned aircraft without the other's consent. Written this way, it would be a felony.
Just ask you to summarize.
Yeah, basically want to just amend the wording so that if you damage or injure somebody with an unmanned aircraft, then it would be a felony. But if you were, the way it's written right now, it seems like if you were to just operate the unmanned aircraft, you could be at risk of being prosecuted as a felony. So
thank you.
Just wanted to bring up those problems that we see with the draft legislation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, that's everyone who's signed up to testify. Is there anyone else here wishing to testify in this measure? If not, are there questions?
Yes, Mr. Unga, thank you. Interesting to note, my question is not in reference to drones, but is there in statute anything of a penalty or anything regarding, you know, we hear or we read about those laser beams that are targeted to aircrafts? What do they call it?
Lasers, like.
Or the laser,
Yeah.
whatever. Did we ever cover anything to include that into statute on penalties or something like that? Because I understand it's pretty dangerous.
I don't know that there are any state laws that apply to lasers being pointed at aircraft. But I think there are federal regulations. I could be mistaken, but I believe that there are federal regulations that cover that matter.
Okay, but we don't have a state statute.
I believe that that's the case.
Yeah, oh, okay, that's something to consider as well, I guess, versus, you know, the federal, because all states usually have an accompanying statute related to the same subject. Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. Any further questions? If not, real quick for Hiko, if you're still there.
Yep, still here. Thanks.
Thanks, Mr. Chong. 711, you'd referenced asking for an exemption from 711 BCND 3.
Correct.
The way I was reading that earlier, those sections cover a prohibition on mounting firearms and other weapons, bombs, weapons of mass destruction, that sort of thing onto drones. Is HECO planning on something like that?
None of that, but we just want to make sure that we're not going to be, prosecuted as a felony for just doing our normal operation.
I'm guessing that's not part of your normal operation?
Correct.
So if we take that out, then that's, shouldn't affect you guys?
I guess so, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right. If there's no further questions, then let's move on to the.
Did you send testimony in writing?
Yep, it's in there.
Which one is that? Oh, Chong. Is that Chong?
Mhm.
Okay, thank you. Got it. Thanks.
Let's move on to the next measure, House Bill 2491, relating to commercial driver's licenses, which amends existing state law to adopt federal penalties for CDL violations. Testifying first is the Department of Transportation.
Hi, good afternoon. Robin again with State Department of Transportation, and we stand by our submitted written testimony in support.
Thank you. That's everyone who was testifying on this. Is there anyone else wishing to testify? If not, any questions? All right, if not, let's move on to House Bill 2492, relating to commercial driver's licenses, which amends the existing law to meet new federal regulations for CDL licenses when the Drug and Alcohol Clearinghouse prohibits a driver from operating a commercial vehicle due to drug and alcohol violations. Again, testifying first is the Department of Transportation.
Hi, again, we stand by our written testimony in support.
Thank you. That's everyone who had signed up. Is there anyone else wishing to testify? If not, are there any questions? If not, thank you again. Let's move on to House Bill 2493, relating to commercial driver's licenses, which creates two new commercial driver's license restrictions relating to operating a commercial motor vehicle in excess of 18,000 pounds gross vehicle weight rating and operating a commercial motor vehicle on Lanai and Molokai only. And testifying first again is DOT.
Yep, Robin Shishida again with DOT, and we stand by our written testimony submitted in support.
Thank you. That's all the testimony we have. If there is no one else wishing to testify, are there any questions? Great. If not, just real quick for DOT, because I'm sure this will come up later. The reason for focusing on Molokai and Lanai is that there are no easily accessible ways to get a CDL there. Is that right?
With Molokai and Lanai, so part of the CDL testing, you need a higher speed facility. I think it's like 45 miles an hour and higher, and you need a multi-lane facility so the trucks can change lanes. And so on both of those islands, we don't have that type of roads. So this restriction would just, they'll be able to test on those islands with the, the roads that they have.
All right, thank you very much. All right, if there's no further questions, let's move on to the last measure on the agenda, HB 2673, relating to roads, which permits the counties to use the county surcharge revenues for maintenance of public roadways and private roadways that are open to the public, and requires the counties to use fuel taxes for reconstruction, improvement, repair, and maintenance of private roads that are open to the public. And testifying first on 2673 is Councilmember Kaniali'i Kleinfelder. Good afternoon. Oh, did you just freeze? Are you with us?
Looks like Matt. Yeah, he's freezed.
Why don't we,
He's frozen.
oh, there you are. Can you hear us? You're muted right now. There you go.
Thank you. Sorry. I have my video effects on, but I can't see my audio settings. Thank you for having me, members of the committee. My name is Matt Kaniali'i Kleinfelder. I'm the councilman for District 5 on Hawai'i Island. This bill has a great importance to us. We have a number of private roads in our large private subdivisions, most of which are unimproved subdivisions, some created before statehood. These subdivisions have been and continue to be and will always be an issue until we can apply some sort of funding. There is a section of the state code that allows counties to work on private roads. So we are allowed to, but the funding source still remains in question. This bill, coupled with an ordinance that I passed in earlier this year, would allow the funding source to be fuel tax and other sources of revenue that are currently, given the language in the HRS, not allowable for private roads. These private roads that we discussed are open to the public. They serve public purpose. And I think the best way to put it is we have residents who have called for ambulance service in different subdivisions, and we're asked to meet the ambulance at the front of the subdivision, which is a 15 to 30-minute drive in a life and death situation because our equipment just can't reach them. So until we make a funding source possible and we start to address issues that none of us created, but we are dealing with 60 years later, we're going to be continually stuck in this predicament. So with that, I ask for your support for this bill, or anything that we can do that allows the counties to access a funding source to apply to our private roads. And for some perspective, one subdivision in my community, Hawaiian Acres specifically, has 77 miles of unpaved private roadways that are maintained through community dues. And in that particular situation, those are voluntary community association dues to be applied towards their roadways.
Thank you very much.
A lot of us can understand the importance of these funding sources to those communities. So mahalo. Mahalo for your time. Mahalo for consideration. And look forward to seeing your decision making. Mahalo.
Mahalo. Thank you. Testifying next on 2673 is the Tax Foundation. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. This is Jade McMillan on behalf of the Tax Foundation of Hawaii. We have submitted some comments on the measure, noting the proviso at the end of current subsection G should be clarified, being that Maui County is the only county to adopt a surcharge after 2022. So there needs to be some changes so that they will be allowed to make use of the funds as needed in the bill. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else wishing to testify in this measure this afternoon? If not, are there questions? Okay, if not, thank you everyone. That's the end of our agenda. Why don't we take a quick recess for decision making? Recess. Good afternoon. We're reconvening the the Senate Committee on Transportation, Culture, and the Arts on our 3:05 p.m. agenda for decision making. Up first is House Bill 2065 HD2 relating to excessive noise. We'd like to move this forward, noting it has a effective date and blank funding as is. Any discussion? If not, Vice Chair.
Chair's recommendation on HB 2065 is to pass unamended with 5 members present. Any voting with reservations? Any no votes?
No.
Okay. Measure is adopted, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Moving on to the next measure, House Bill 2071 HD1 relating to the photo red light imaging detector system. I'd like to move this forward again, noting has a defective date on it, further consideration to the Judiciary Committee as is. Any discussion? If not, Vice Chair.
Chair's recommendation on HB 2071 is to pass unamended with 5 members present. Any voting with reservations? Any no votes?
No.
Okay. Measure is adopted with 4 votes, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Up next is House Bill 1578 HD2 relating to transportation, which permits a shipping container chassis that holds a valid out-of-state certificate of vehicle registration to obtain a certificate of safety inspection. 1578 recommendation is to pass as is. Any discussion? If not, Vice Chair.
Chair's recommendation on HB 1578 is to pass unamended with 5 members present. Any voting with reservations? Any no votes? Hearing none, Mr. Chair, measure is adopted.
Thank you. Up next is House Bill 1861 HD2 relating to number plates, which requires license plates issued to contain an okina in the word Hawai'i. We'd like to move this forward with amendments. We'll note that we heard a similar Senate bill earlier in the session, which we had moved out, making some amendments. So we want to reflect those Senate amendments, which retain the ability for KINA to be used among the other provisions of this bill, but add in a section which clarifies for the conservation license plate that the legislature crafted several years ago, that would apply to electric vehicles, as well as clarify the terminology Aloha State, which is generally included in your standard license plates, but would not be necessary in this particular special number plate. And then finally add in a clean date to the measure. Any discussion there? If not, Vice Chair.
Chair's recommendation on HB 1861 to pass with amendments with 5 members present, any voting with reservations, any no votes. Hearing none, measure is adopted. Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Moving to HB 1869 HD1 relating to unmanned aircraft, which establishes offenses for misuse of unmanned aircraft. I'd like to move this forward, recommending a handful of amendments. First, we'll adopt the recommendation to replace the term unmanned with uncrewed. Secondly, require that operating uncrewed aircraft be under the provisions of this bill, particularly when it gets into law enforcement engagement where you have potential weapons and other things, that uncrewed aircraft must be directly controlled by a human operator at all times to avoid unintended consequences. We'll add in tech amendments. We'll note in the committee report a couple of the concerns that were raised by Hawaiian Electric in its testimony for the Judiciary Committee to take a look at, which is probably the better purview when it looks at penalties and things like that. And that's it. Any discussion? If not, Vice Chair.
Chair's recommendation on HB 1869 to pass with amendments with 5 members present, any voting with reservations, any no votes. Hearing none, Mr. Chair, measure is adopted.
Thank you. Moving into the next measure, HB 2491, HD2 relating to commercial driver's licenses, which amends existing state law to adopt federal penalties for CDL violations. Recommendation is to pass as is. There's no discussion. Vice Chair for the vote.
Okay. Chair's recommendation on HB 2491 to pass unamended with 5 members present. Anyone voting with reservations, any no votes?
No.
Okay. Measure is adopted with 4 votes, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Moving on to HB 2492 HD2 relating to CDLs, which amends existing law to meet new federal regulations. Again, recommendation is to pass as is. There's no discussion. Vice Chair.
Chair's recommendation on HB 2492 to pass unamended with 5 members present, any voting with reservations, any no votes.
No.
Okay. Measure is adopted with 4 ayes, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Up next is HB 2493 HD2 relating to CDLs, which creates 2 new CDL restrictions relating to operating a commercial motor vehicle in excess of 18,000 pounds of gross vehicle weight rating, and provides opportunities for folks on Molokai to be able to get CDLs. Recommendation, again, is to pass as is. If there's no discussion, Vice Chair.
Chair's recommendation on HB 2493 to pass unamended with 5 members present, any voting with reservations, any no votes. Hearing none, measure is adopted with 5 votes, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Finally, moving on to House Bill 2673 HD2 relating to roads, which permits counties to use the county surcharge revenues for maintenance of public and private roadways that are open to the public. Makes a few other amendments. We'd like to move this forward with amendments. First of all, thanking the council member for taking the time from Hawaii Island to weigh in. But we'd like to make a couple amendments. So for counties over 500,000, we'll remove language allowing funds used for maintenance and operation of public roadways. Secondly, we'll insert Section 2 of Senate Bill 2566 SD1, which extends the Act 200 working group for 1 additional year to 2025. We'll note that this goes on to the Ways and Means Committee with a July 3000 effective date, so they can take a look and make sure that the expenditure of funds can be properly verified under the bill and under these amendments. So any discussion? If not, Vice Chair.
Chair's recommendation on HB 2673 to pass with amendments with 5 members present, any voting with reservations, any no votes. Hearing none, measure is adopted with 5 votes. Mr. Chair.
Thank you. That's the end of our agenda. Mahalo, everybody. We're adjourned.